Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of We Get to Do This, episode 9. This week, we had our first interview guest, Todd Stebleton, who has been a mentor figure for me for about 4 years now, and also towards Kailee for about a year and a half. He has been so good to both of us, and it's definitely safe to say my career would not be where it is right now without him. So Todd, thank you very much. Todd is a certified clinical nutritionist as well as a certified personal trainer. He is quite the expert in kinesiology. It's the best way to understand him. Kinesiology, aka human movement. You can think about it that way. He's quite the expert in the body, on the human body. So we talk about everything from the human body, but also talk a lot in depth about entrepreneurship too, and kind of his journey and where he came from, and advice he has for budding entrepreneurs like ourselves, but anyone else who is listening. We also get to learn a little bit about his background and past lives, aka the tree that he once was. You'd have to listen to hear all of that, but you are not going to want to miss this episode with Todd Stebleton. It was definitely, I'm biased, but probably the best interview we've done so far.
Hands down.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. And as always, if you could leave us a 5-star rating and review, we would greatly appreciate that. Otherwise, here's the podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hello, and welcome to the We Get to Do This podcast. My name is Kailee.
And I'm Jacob.
And we are your co-hosts.
In this show, we're going to dive into all things our lives, from our partnership to romance to entrepreneurship to growing our businesses together, our fitness journeys, and we're going to have a ton of different guests on that relate to what I just said in some way. We're hoping you enjoy the show, and if you do,
please feel free to follow us, leave us a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcasts, and enjoy.
And if you don't like the show, tough. Thank you.
Thanks.
What is up?
Episode 9.
We get to do this. I'm personally very excited about this one.
We have a special guest today.
Well, my favorite number is 9, so this is great. I didn't even know it was episode 9. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be here before you just said that. Now I'm excited.
Heck yeah. 9 is the best number around. Mr. Todd Stebleton, I've talked about you to a lot of people that probably are listening to this show, but I feel as though a lot of people may not know you yet, so I think it's really cool that we'll be able to have you on and put a face to who you are and the mentor you've been to me and Kailee for the past, like, I've known you for like 4 years now, right? Which is insane.
Goes fast.
And Kailee already for a year, and I feel as though both of us with our businesses wouldn't be anywhere close to where they are right now without you. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not sure how I helped, but it sounds positive. So I'm glad I did.
You've definitely helped a lot. And I would love to just kind of roll and get this podcast started with asking you what it is you do, how you do it, and why you do what you do.
Probably the hardest questions for me to answer, honestly. I get asked that often. Some of my clients get asked that often. What does Todd really do? I'm not sure. If I were to distill it down, I try to help people. And I know that that's boring and vague and too broad, but when I started in the industry, I wanted to go to medical school. So I worked in a hospital setting. And I realized I wasn't really helpful in that setting. There were opportunities to be helpful, but working in the heart center, people would come in for their second and third heart attack in 2 years. And the most I would hear from the cardiologist is, John, you should try to watch what you eat and get some exercise. Well, John's 350. He needs more than that. And I saw that enough times that I realized John needs more. I can do more, but I can't hear. So that's when I went on my own adventure and wanted to open up my own space where I had the flexibility to help people to the best of my ability. And it's not as sexy as being in medicine, but the reward that has come with it has helped me know that I made a good decision. So what do? I try to help people. And it started out real simple. I remember my first client, stereotypical, wanted to lose 30 pounds. The kids are out of the house now. It's time for me to pay attention to myself. And we had some success. And with that came a referral. And the referral was, hey, my friends said that you helped her lose 30 pounds. I'd like to do that too, but I also had a knee replacement done. A little bit more complex. And then a few months later, it was, can you help me lose weight? I also have type 2 diabetes. More complex. Fast forward 8 years, I have stage 2 cancer. Can you help me? So the complexity of the clients grew as I was able to provide a better service. As I became more valuable, the clients became more complex. That was a good thing because it encouraged me, genuinely inspired me to continue learning, continue my education. My degrees in college helped me learn how to learn. It didn't give me what I needed to help people to the degree that I have, but it gave me a platform to start learning, and I'm real thankful for that. But I've been open and curious to continue learning, and it's allowed me to help more people. And at the end of the day, that's all I care about, is helping people.
Right. How would you then describe how you're helping people specifically? Like, what does a typical day look like for you? Obviously, it's all over the place, but
I've been doing this for a little over 20 years now. So I have clients that I've been working with where I have realized the way in which I help them is simply by having an appointment with them. I remember about 8 years ago, one of my clients said to me, Todd, of all the things that you do, I need you to know that the most valuable thing that you offer me is just scheduling an appointment with you. And I didn't like that. It didn't feel good. I feel I'm worth way more than an appointment. But as time has gone on, I realized these appointments add up. They're staying on track. They're staying focused. The things that are important to them are in front of their face by having these appointments. And I began to value that more than I did previously. I used to feel good when I could hit a home run, fixing an injury or diagnosing, for lack of a better word, something more substantial. It made me feel of value when I could do something like that, rather than just having an appointment like somebody can have at a local fitness company, taking classes, things like that. I'm more than that. I want to be more than that.
right.
So that really helped me change the perspective that not all of my clients are wounded. Not all of them need a big life change. Sometimes they just need an appointment. So I learned to value that better, I think, as time has gone on and really more recently.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's a good way to look at it too.
Yeah, I think that's good for both of us
To remember as we're growing businesses. And I think, probably you more with acupuncture specifically, but a lot of times people will come see us for a problem, and even we'll fall into the trap sometimes of, all right, we fix the problem and then send them on their way. But there's always more to do, and there's more appointments to be had, right? And, for you can speak to your case on that, but I think a lot of it with personal training and run coaching specifically with me is we build these relationships that their goals when they first meet me are way different than 2-3 years later, right? I think that's one of the cool things about this realm too, and the relationships you build and appointments per se, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. I like that.
Our goals change. We all do.
Yeah.
We get inspired in different ways at different times. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it curious. So yeah, not only do our clients' goals change, but so do ours.
Right.
How we approach our clients or our goals, our own personal life, our personal ambitions with health, wellness, fitness, all of those things. It's always changing.
Right.
And how can you be a resource for somebody when their interests, their inspirations are always changing, and also their desperations? People change for one of two reasons, either inspiration or desperation. And that's a unique thing about our industry is we work with individuals who are going to experience both of those things. Especially for you, I'm guessing a lot of your patients or clients come to see you that are more protocol driven. They're more desperate. Some of it's about lifestyle, but some of that is I got a problem and I need help. We experience both of that, right? Some of it's lifestyle and some of it is I have a problem and I need help. So if they're training for a marathon, they're inspired. If they got a knee problem that's preventing them from training for a marathon, they're desperate. Needs are different. How do we adapt to that as coaches, as lifestyle educators that sometimes crosses lines of therapists, and to be able to mix all of that in. So I'll go back to the question you asked me a few minutes ago. What does a day of mine look like? Sometimes I'm working with people that are inspired, and sometimes I'm working with people that are desperate. And I have to switch gears too. Lifestyle is always the center of everything that I do with my clients, but sometimes it's protocol driven. Sometimes it's not about lifestyle. Sometimes right now this hurts. We got to figure out why and how do we fix it so we can get back into our lifestyle stuff.
Right. Right. I think that's the difference though too with good providers versus the opposite, right? And I'll go into sessions sometimes with like my Excel doc, have a plan ready to go. And then they'll walk in and say, oh, my knee hurts, or I just had like an animal die in my house or something. And it completely 180s the whole session, right? So it's like we have to be able to adapt and move and answer different questions like on the fly constantly. That's part of it.
It's always a balance of providing what the person wants with what the person needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not often that those two things are in alignment. Somebody comes in and they want to do this, but they really need to do this in order to get the thing that they want. And I was always concerned about that earlier in my career. I see what this person needs. I can predict with a high certainty of what their future is going to look like if we don't address this issue. But it's not why they hired me.
Right.
It's not why they're here. So how do I bundle those things together? I think that's what teaching, education, compassion, looking out for them, not just helping them achieve their goal, but looking out for them as a whole while they are in pursuit of trying to achieve that goal. And there's a little bit of an art form to that.
How do you communicate that to someone? If they're saying, I want your help with this, with X, and you look at them and go, this is not the first thing we need to address.
Teaching and educating, but the teaching and educating comes from evaluating, right? Doing assessments and things like that. So we'll use the example of a runner. If somebody comes in and they are a runner or they want to be a runner, and I take them through some basic evaluations and they don't have adequate ankle mobility, they're going to run still. They're just going to do it with enough compensation to get by today to cause bigger problems for the future. Or a knee issue or a low back issue or whatever the case might be, right? So I want to evaluate to make sure that they can meet basic criteria. That is not going to eventually be the reason why they can't be successful. So if I can teach them and educate them, here's what I'm seeing, here's what we can predict with a high degree of certainty, what's going to happen if we don't address this. So I want to build this into your programming, into your day-to-day or your week-to-week, because if we don't, the chances of you being successful are less. Yeah, we can still work on the other things that we talked about, but if we neglect this, I am being negligent in the programming of this plan for you. And I don't want to be negligent. I want people to be successful. Simple as that.
I also feel like with all of our jobs, there's like a huge level of trust that we're like building. Because if they're not like by doing the education and things like that, like that's how they start to trust you. Because if they don't believe in you, they're not going to believe in the process.
Yes.
And I think that's where like talking about the appointments, where that comes in, because they're coming to you knowing that you're going to provide them some kind of value to their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's huge.
Trust is the foundation of all relationships. You know, whether it be a romantic relationship, a family relationship, or a business relationship. And that comes with time. You know, you all know this just as well as I do. When people trust you, you can do amazing things for them, with them. If there's concerns about trust, it does not matter what you know, how good your program is, or how hard you're trying. It just doesn't matter, right? So when I see something with somebody and I'm like, I'm concerned about this for you for these reasons. If I say it like that, I'm building trust with them because they know I'm looking out for them. If I identify something and I say, no, we just need to work on this, they don't understand that because I haven't provided the compassion or the education as to why. Trust goes down. My techniques are the same, but I'm not going to break through with them. We're not going to break through together. So just don't have that trust. So yeah, it goes back to teaching and education. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, when I was growing up, I feel like I was a good student. I valued learning. And because of that, I value teaching. And it's not about arrogance. I don't care that somebody walks away with, oh, Todd's really smart. That doesn't make me feel valued. But if Todd taught me something, that makes me feel valued. I like that a lot. There's a lot of speakers I've seen over the years who will get behind the podium and razzle dazzle people with how smart they are. And it is impressive. I don't mean to discredit that. But I do want to talk to the audience afterwards and tell me what you learned. That can inspire me. That impresses me. Mm-hmm. What did your people walk away with? Mm-hmm. I mentioned this to some clients just a week or two ago. One of the things that makes me feel like I'm doing a good job is that my clients are smart. Not smart out of textbook, but theoretically, philosophically, they understand and get what we're doing. They see the big picture. I see them start teaching and communicating to other people the things that they've learned. And that makes me feel valued. Mm-hmm. And I want to feel valued. I do. It's important to me. I feel like I'm selfless in a lot of ways, but I am selfish in that way. I need to know that what I'm doing is making a positive difference. And those are ways in which it's affirming to me that at least in some areas, I'm doing a good job, you know?
Right.
Well, and then it's cool too, because then they're spreading it to other people. And it's not just, your one-on-one appointments. Like if they're going and talking to their friends and saying, hey, this is something that I learned, or this is something that's working for me, then it's just like your impact grows.
You never know what you say, how far it'll go and how wide it'll reach. Mm-hmm. And that's good and bad. That can be good messages and bad messages. And our profession is to govern the good messages, to spread the good things, right?
Right. I love it. So, why do you do what you do? We kind of forgot about that question.
This is going to be a little esoteric, and I'm probably going to lose some listeners for you here. I apologize for that. But
Stay with us, people.
Others are probably going to buy in. I didn't know the answer to that question until 2 years ago. Why do I do what I do? A few years ago, I would have said I love to teach. I love to help people. I love the human body. It fascinates me. I love performance. I feel like those are all generalizations that anybody in the health, wellness, and medical industry would share and say. But 2 years ago, I was inspired to go see somebody to do what's called a past lives regression therapy session. About 10 years ago, a client encouraged me to read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. And it's about a PhD researcher and her husband, who is a world-renowned psychiatrist, who was given a really tough case. This woman had seen a bunch of different psychologists, psychiatrists, had these fears, and no one could break through. He decided to put her in hypnosis, which was not his specialty. He wasn't even necessarily a big fan or believer of hypnosis, but he didn't know what else to do. And he started identifying that she was talking about what appeared to be a past life. He had spent dozens of sessions with her and was able to figure out, with meticulous note-taking and a real genuine investment in her, she was referring to, I think it was 4 distinct past lives. Some she was female, some she was male. They were at different times in history. And she had this detail to them that made him go, gosh, is there something to this? Long story short, he identified these areas in her past lives. That was the reason that she was suffering in this life. And it rocked his world. It challenged everything that he believed in all the ways in which he was trained. His wife, being a PhD researcher, also was challenged. She started to do some research outside of Western medicine research, Eastern medicine. And she was like, wow, I've always said there's no research on this. It turns out there's no research in Western medicine on this. And there is a unending amount of research in Eastern medicine. His life was changed. His wife's life was changed because of this patient. So much so, he wrote this book. Fast forward several years, about 8. So now 2 years ago, I went and saw a past life regression therapist. And it was an amazing experience. And I came out of that, we identified 3 previous lives of mine. And I won't walk you through all of them because it's relatively a long story, although I remember them in great detail. And the third one was the most unique, the most remarkable. I had my third and past life in this therapy session. I was a tree. It turns out I was a giving tree. And we had talked in great detail about, I feel like every day, everyone is coming to me to feed, to get nourishment. And each and every year I grew bigger and bigger, and each and every year more and more people were coming. And that's all great. The problem is that sometimes I don't have anything to give. And that is a big part of my life. I've learned sometimes I feel spent. And it made me think about and realize I can give, and this tree is fruitful as long as I am always being nourished, as long as the soil is always full of nourishment. I can give. So then it made me start to question, where do I get nourishment? What, when, why, how, all of these things. What's stealing from my nourishment? And it just helped really reframe me. And I think that that's the best thing that I could describe. During this same time, I was going through something, and a friend of mine said, you need to go do this for yourself. I've witnessed you give everything that you have to everybody all the time. Go do this for yourself. And this happened right after this regression therapy session I had. I said, you're right. So Why do I do what I do? Because that's what I do. I'm a giver. I'm here to help. I think we all are as human beings. When I say that, it does not come from a place of arrogance, like I'm more capable of helping people than others. That's not what I mean by that. I am a conduit of energy. I bring in energy, I harvest it, and I give off energy. And I have the right and I have the power as a human being to decide what type of energy do I want to give off. How do I want to nourish other people or not? I'm going to give off energy. We all do. It can be positive. It can be destructive. Who do I want to be? Why do I do what I do? I want to be a force for good. I want to be good. That's it. And I'm not always good. I make mistakes. I've made mistakes. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to do good and wanting to be good. That's it. That's why I do what I do.
That's awesome.
I'm a tree.
Yeah, you're a tree. No, my last name's Oak.
I know it is.
So
I know it is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That makes me want to do that, actually. I feel like that'd be really wild. I've been doing, not to change the subject, I've been doing brain spotting in therapy lately. And it's a lot of like in your head meditation type of work, basically, where you like focus in on specific body parts that you're feeling based off of thoughts, right? So you think about the thought and then you focus on the body part that you feel based off your thought, essentially. And every time I do a session, I end up like doing these weird, like meditative trips where it's thinking about kind of some parts of my past, but also like future and things that never even happened. And it's just wild, like the mind and the body and the connection and everything there.
I'll call that awareness.
Yeah.
Over the years, witnessing, different yoga instructors and, professionals like that, they talk a lot about mind body. I don't know if most of us know what mind body means. We use that word a lot. We hear that word even more. But mind body, there's a physical component to it, and there's an energetic component to it. When you think about what am I feeling in my head, what am I feeling in my body, how are these things related? That is mind body, and we can distill that word down to it's awareness. It's total awareness, at least physically. It's total awareness. And you may have heard me mention this before when I talk about fascia. I've had some training in fascia from a guy named Dr. Guy Voyer. He's French. And, when I was in school and even post-school learning about fascia, we learn of it as connective tissue. That is the most basic elementary understanding of what fascia is. Fascia is our brain tissue. When we're born, we have 3 cells that we're all born with, and those cells turn into tissues. And out of our brain comes fascia. When we look at fascia in the body, unlike muscles or bones, there's no beginning and ending to it. There's no origin and insertion of fascia. It is a network that has no beginning and end. And it literally is the extension of our brain. We use the words muscle memory a lot. There's no such thing as muscle memory. I get tired of hearing it. Our muscles don't remember anything, but our fascia does. And our fascia is the communication between our brain and all other tissues. And it's literal. It is literal. And the cool thing about fascia, because it has no beginning and end, it doesn't attach to anything or detach from anything. So when we look at the spine, like the vertebral column, you take a vertebra and fascia comes to the vertebra, it doesn't meet the vertebra. It goes through the vertebra. It goes in, through, and around everything. We used to talk about it's like saran wrap around the muscle, right? So get on the foam roller, you have an adhesion, a myofascial adhesion. Roll out that adhesion. It's saran wrap around the muscle. It's not just around the muscle. It's through the muscle. It's everywhere. There's no place that doesn't have it. It's the transport for our communication, and it's the transport for our hydration, which is just a form of communication. Water is just simply the carrier to the vessel that provides all the communication to all of our cells, whether it be communication with nutrients or thoughts or whatever the case might be.
So on that subject, this was like a year ago now, but I texted you when this happened. I was in a massage and I was getting worked on my psoas, and I texted you and I was geeking out about the fact that there was one specific moment in which she hit a specific spot, and it was like it triggered this weird like flashback in which I like kind of relived like 20 negative moments, like sad moments in my life. And it was I describe it as, it was like I was watching a slideshow and literally there were 20 slides. It was just like boom, 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 like rattling. Like it was like it felt like a glitch almost. Mm-hmm. And it sounds very like wild. I remember texting you about that and you saying something about how the psoas can sometimes store trauma. Is it more than in that like type of situation? Does the muscle, is it the fascia then in that situation? That's what I'm trying to ask. Less of like the muscle and more of the fascia that's in that area of your body.
We store all emotions in all of our tissues. Some of those tissues are more apt to store emotions, particularly the more centered to our body. If we like look at the different chakras, energy networks of our body, the most central ones, so you can think psoas, reproductive area, right? These areas tend to take the majority of the stress or of the emotion. Trauma is generally stored there. Spine surgeons, world's most renowned spine surgeons, after decades in surgery, have written books that talk about, at the end of all of this, at the end of my career, I realized that almost all of this has to do with emotional trauma that's being stored in these tissues. So our mental, emotional energy is being held in and therefore affecting, oftentimes negatively, the tissues in some areas. So we go in and operate on the tissues. We're trying to fix the physical problem, which certainly has become a physical problem. But oftentimes, more often than not, the root of it came from more of an energetic problem, mental, emotional, spiritual, those kinds of things. So all of our tissues are storage places for emotions. There's no question about it. We just tend to take what's most central to our body. Those are the areas where we can hold the most stress.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the reason, I think, is simple. Healthy people have healthy babies. As we are prone to absorbing more and more stress, we tend to lose health. As we lose health, we lose our ability to reproduce. If we go that far with it, the least healthy people are unable to reproduce, which brings up an incredible subject matter. Today, only 1 in 5.5 couples are able to reproduce. Wow. The rate of reproduction is like nothing we have ever seen before. And it has to do with our health. Our health is being so compromised that eventually our body's like, I'm not able to reproduce even if I wanted to. And we could talk about for 8 different episodes on this podcast of why that is. Is it the toxins and the xenoestrogens and the coming from plastics and this? Is it stress that's manipulating our hormones? What is it? Is it the LED blue lights on these screens? I mean, we can talk about those things forever. But the point of the matter is that when we're under stress, our tissues absorb it. And when our tissues absorb it, we feel it. We feel it. The only tissue in the body where we can't feel stress is your brain tissue. It's the only tissue that does not have pain receptors. But there's some pretty well accepted theories that when we feel pain in our back, we can identify it. We feel it. When we feel pain in our brain, which we don't feel, we route that to something called depression. When our brain cells are stressed and inflamed and hurting and traumatized. We call that depression. That is low back pain for the brain, which is fascinating. So if we treat low back pain with lifestyle, decreasing inflammation, nourishing the body, stretching, think of plasticity, but in the brain it's called neuroplasticity. Could we treat depression more effectively that way? If depression, to some degree, is the same as chronic low back pain, would we treat chronic low back pain with an antidepressant and expect a positive outcome? If we treated depression the same way we treat low back pain, irritable bowel syndrome, whatever, you name the system, it's just stress. If we treated it the same way, we have better outcomes. It's an interesting conversation.
That is a very interesting conversation.
Well, and just something I was thinking about with everything you're saying, even related to like fascia. And because one of the reasons why I left the hospital, Western Medical Systems, was because we just, talking about, surgeons, you just cut things out. And then talking about the fascia, I think we're finally realizing you can't just like cut through the body to get to the organ that you want and then repair that. Like you're breaking up that network of fascia, which is then sending that signal to your brain. And then we're not doing anything to repair it. And then people are still left with these chronic lifelong issues and pain. And we're not actually fixing it because we're not talking about the emotional side of things. We're not talking about the lifestyle things. And I think there's so much more to it than just saying we need to go cut this or we need to just give you an antidepressant to mask this.
This is the hard part. And this is the part of our profession that will never change. It's so complex. We understand some of it. We're able to do little of what we understand. So if we understand 1%, we're able to deal with 1% of that 1%. We're always left knowing, wishing, hoping that we can do more. And out of respect to surgeons in medicine, sometimes we need to cut through this to get to that. There will be some negative consequences, and the idea is that the positive consequences significantly outweigh the negative. I have a client who recently I sat down with. We had a heart-to-heart. We shed some tears together in my studio. And I said, listen, I think you need surgery. I don't say that to a lot of people. I want to do everything I can to prevent surgery. Not for the sake of preventing surgery, but getting them so healthy that they're no longer even a candidate for it. I couldn't do that for this guy. And he was doing everything I recommended. I was referring him out to other professionals. He came in every day with a good attitude. And for about a year, I saw him every week come in to see me looking less lifeful. His posture was getting worse. The way in which he was walking, how he was carrying himself. I saw life slowly dripping out of him. And it hurt my heart for him. He is a good person with a positive attitude. And I'm like, you don't deserve this. You do not deserve this. I recommended he go see someone. Used my contacts, found a highly respectable surgeon, and happy to say he's 3.5 weeks into his recovery. He is not recovered. He's only 3.5 weeks in a long journey, but he is already a different human. And I'm so thankful for that. Is he going to have trauma and negative consequences from that surgery? Absolutely. It was a big deal. But the positive will significantly outweigh the negative. But you're right. There's more we got to do. There's more things we got to look at.
For all of us, it's coming up with an individual treatment plan for everyone, because instead of saying, everyone should go get this, it's like, you were able to work with him and then determine, okay, he needs something more than I can give him. And I think that's just like a very good skill to have, like as a clinician, to be able to determine that and then be able to refer to the proper people. people.
Yeah, and that just takes time. It takes a combination of three things: time, experience, having success, and having failures. And I think you need all three. And the more of those three you have, the more positively influential you can be. It's the way it is.
And then always putting the person's needs first, like we talked about at the beginning. Like, what does this person need at this time?
When people are inspired, they may be influenced by their needs. They're mostly influenced by their wants. When people are desperate, they are inspired by their needs because their needs are holding them back, whether it be from getting in and out of a car or excelling at their next marathon. When people are struggling, it gets their attention. Like I said before, people change for one of two things, either inspiration or desperation. Usually that's desperation. People do their most incredible things in their life when they're super inspired or super desperate. When you hover in the middle, life is comfortable, but progress is minimal at best. And then it's a spectrum, right? You can be a little bit inspired. That's good. You can be a little bit desperate. That's good. Likely you're going to start making some changes. But when you get out to these ends of the spectrum, you look at anybody who's ever accomplished anything amazing. The level of inspiration or the level of desperation is all it was. Nobody climbed the tallest mountain in the world because they were kind of inspired. Nobody overcame being a single parent with 6 kids and no job history because they were a little bit desperate. People accomplish their greatest things when their emotions are stretched at those ends of the spectrum. Ironically, in our lives, we work so hard to be in neither end of that spectrum because we want to be comfortable. So it's this irony that we all play with on a day-to-day basis of, I want to be comfortable, I want things to go, I want peace. That's kind of the big, cool, Instagram-y thing today. Just only hang out with people who bring you peace. If people don't bring you peace, get them out of your life. Well, if you're only dealing with peace, your life's going to start going downhill real quick. Just because something is challenging to you or someone is challenging you, that doesn't mean there's not peace to it. There's an opportunity there to be inspired to do something. That's not a bad thing. It's uncomfortable, sure. It's not peaceful. But do we really want peace? Now, we talk about war, right? Murder, of course, we want peace. But our emotional, mental comfort zone, I don't think peace is what we should be going for. I think it's progress. I think it's making a difference. I think it's doing something with this life that we have the gift of living. And if you want to do something worthwhile, it's not going to be peaceful. It's not. It's the way it is.
How do you explain that then with like talking about stress and how stress, can cause inflammation? It's causing all these reproductive issues.
Stress is a choice. That's how that conversation starts and ends. Stress is a choice. You can't feel stress unless you do stress. Tony Robbins talks about that. Motion equals emotion. If we were to walk or watch somebody walk out here on the street and they're really depressed, you know that. You see it. You see their breathing. You see their posture, the rate at which they're moving, how they're moving. The chest is down, the head is forward. You see it. You have to do stress to feel stress. I'll give you an example at one of Tony Robbins' seminars I went to. I've been to a handful of them. Unbelievable. But he made us stand up. There's a room of 7,000 people. He made us stand up. Now, this was about a 45-minute exercise that I'm going to talk about, and you will envision this happening in a minute. But it took 45 minutes. You have a partner who's a total stranger. You stand up together. Pretend that you two are partners. Your job, Jacob, is to stand up as tall as you can, chest up, head up, so your eyes are gazing upward. You don't have to do it. Just follow along. I don't want to, though. Okay. Well, it'd take 45 minutes. Follow along. Your job is to coach him on doing that. So you say chest up, head up, put a little smile on your face, but do it more. Do it more. Bigger smile. Bigger smile. Your chest is dropping, chest up, bigger smile. Look up a little higher. Breathe a little deeper. Longer breath, deeper breath. Fill up your belly. Eyes back up. Smile. You're losing. Yep, there you go. Chest up. And you just keep going through this. And you get to this physical state, motion. You get into this physical motion, position. Everything changes. Your thoughts change. Your blood chemistry changes. Oxygen to tissue, ratio of cortisol to melatonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, growth hormone, all of your inflammatory hormones and cytokines and all of these things. It all changes that fast. And then once they're in that position, you say to the person, without changing that position, without changing your eye gaze, the smile and the tension of the muscles you feel in your face, think of something negative. You can't. You can't unless you change your posture first. That is a scientific fact. So what do you do with people that are stressed? You help them identify there are stressors in your life, things that naturally cause stress. But how you choose to perceive that stress is your choice. What do you do with it? I had this conversation with a client this morning. I asked her a question. Think of somebody that you look up to as an adult. When we were kids, we looked up to people, but usually for different reasons. Now that you're an adult, who do you look up to and why? This is a conversation we had this morning. We talked about that. And after observing a group of my clients who I look up to, my clients a great deal, I learn more from them, I think, than they learn from me. What I have learned about people that I would consider to be successful, whatever that means for you, what I consider to be successful, these people can handle what appears to be a substantial amount of stress. Totally fine. And it's made me think over the last handful of years. I think, and I could be wrong, this is just my hypothesis, the degree to which somebody is successful is the degree to which they can handle stress. Your success level is governed by your ability to handle stress. That's a hypothesis I made just by observation. And I'm still holding on to it. I'm open to being proven otherwise, but I'm going to hold on to that for now.
Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that's something that you are born with and you can just handle a lot of stress, or do you think it is reps over time?
I'm going to say what everyone else has said that's come before me. Emotions are a muscle. It is a muscle, and you work on it, and you work on it. And as you accomplish something stressful, and I'm going to give a perfect example directly related to you two that's going to hit home. As you accomplish something successful, what happens to your confidence on being able to handle that stress that you just got through? Your confidence goes up. What you accomplished in your long run a couple months ago, right? The fact that you accomplished that meant that you had to find things inside of you that you didn't even know existed. You had to become somebody that you had never been, right? To accomplish something that you've never accomplished. As soon as you accomplished that, and it wasn't because you accomplished it, it's because of who you had to become to accomplish it. Your confidence in your life overall, tell me if I'm wrong, went up. Your ability to handle stress, what the little things that used to stress you out, I bet you just went away. They probably don't stress you out anymore. You are so much more capable in life of handling, dealing with how you perceive stress. Your ability went up, and therefore your overall stress went down. Why do I don't think you're born with it. I think you learn it. You learn it by succeeding. You learn it by failing. You learn it by succeeding. You learn it by failing. And you keep pushing that, and you keep pushing that. You learn it by being inspired or being desperate. You were inspired to run that race. I know you were, or you wouldn't have given it a shot. But without knowing, I can say I know there were probably moments in that race where you felt desperate. And those two things together, working congruently at the same time, forced you to become and do things that you've never done. And therefore you accomplished something that you've never accomplished before. But those crazy degrees of inspiration and desperation are the reason that you got there. And then you were on the threshold probably several times, maybe questioning, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do another step. I don't know if I can do another mile. But then you find the value of people that you love and care about you, surrounding you, encouraging you. You don't know that you can do this. It doesn't mean that you can't do this, right? So you have people around you encouraging you, willing you to do something that maybe you don't even want to do because you don't believe or know that you can. But you proved yourself that you could.
That's why I called you in the middle of it. Inspiration.
that was like mile 180.
I
was like, you're like the last person
50.
that
I'm like,
called.
I need something big here.
What did I say?
You laughed. It was great.
I laughed at you?
That was awesome.
I think you're like, I bet you're feeling a lot of pain. I bet you're feeling a lot right now, aren't you? I'm like crying.
Not
Because all of my emotions.
You're torturing yourself. Of course you were.
I think you said, "Oh, are you crying right now?" And then you sounded concerned.
That's right. And you're like, good.
You're like, good.
You're feeling.
You're feeling things.
Yeah.
Well, I think I remember saying that, but why I said good maybe was lost, and when I asked if you were crying, if you're in pain, and you said yes, and I said good, it's not because, I'm glad you're sorry. I said good, it's because that's good, because you're about to break through something you've never broken through.
I think
you did say that.
You did say that.
Oh, I did?
We just left that out.
Yeah.
Well, you left out the whole reason why I said it. It just made me look like a jerk.
Well, we talked about specifically how you talked about how the last 20 miles or whatever was a celebration at this point. You were like, you're not going to have to be on at night anymore. You've made it to the end. You're sleeping in your own bed, whatever. That was,
you don't have anything to fear anymore. It's time to
you're
celebrate.
almost done. Now it's like, go have fun, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it too.
But yeah, ultras are that perfect example of hitting those super high highs and the super low lows. And then you do transform as a result. My last 5 miles of the 200 was this incredible out-of-body experience. Mm-hmm. And I chased that. That's one of the reasons why I do these things.
Absolutely.
That's why I did my 50 miler first. And I was like, this is absolutely incredible. This is one of the biggest highs I've ever had in my life without using drugs, substances. It was just me pushing my body to all the limits. And then same for the 100. Those last 10 miles, the last few ultras, I run fast on the last 5 to 10 miles because you've had such that low that then I don't know, you could probably explain what this is better, but just like that, the passion, like that energy just like comes in and just pushes you and gets you across the finish line. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I mean, I've never had kids, but like for a mom giving labor, and going way past the pain level that humans typically experience, but yet you persevere because you're doing this incredible thing. You've been in that pain, and then you have a child out of it, and you're producing life. And that's one of the reasons why I do these races, is to experience all of the feelings. And like you're saying, I think so many people...
You're a feeling addict.
I like to feel.
Yes.
And so many people do now just stay in that comfort zone. And I think there's times for that. But my whole goal, and one of the reasons why I run, is to show people that we have so many feelings in our bodies and this human experience that we're having. And it's so hard for me to see when people don't have those experiences. Not that I want you to be suffering and super sad all the time, but that's how you get to those highs. That's how you experience that joy, and don't just have this like average human experience. Because I think that does lead to depression and stress, and I don't want that.
Who does?
Right.
And that's one way to get it.
It's one way.
That's one way to get it. Absolutely.
I love it. Do we want to talk about nutrition at all, or do you want to... We're at almost an hour. Do you want to talk about nutrition, or do you want to save it and talk about it another time?
I think we can talk another time.
Sure.
Can we have you back again?
Of course.
That's good.
One last question I have. If you had, for the entrepreneur side of things, because I did want to just briefly touch on this. One piece of advice for Kailee and I, specifically to as we grow our businesses, and you can think about that we get to do this podcast as a way of us kind of, working together a little bit on growing our business. We're 26 and 30, and we have a long ways to go, right, over the next, what we're trying to do and whatnot. I'm just curious if you have any advice for us on what you think in terms of things we could potentially work on to become better, either for, again, like each business individually, or for this podcast, or anything like that.
Or something you wish you had known, like when you started getting into the entrepreneurship world.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a basic question, but sometimes I'm basic,
It's a good question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your question is, do I have any advice to give you as early entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Sure, I can think of a few things, but these are just my experiences, whether my personal experiences or observation in my life experience. But you need people. You need good people around you. The question that you're asking me is a good question to ask a lot of people all of the time. You will get different pieces of advice. Sometimes they contrast each other glaringly from highly successful people. So understand that other people's advice is maybe what has worked for them or what didn't work for them. That may or may not have anything to do with you. Take everyone's advice, including mine, with a grain of sand, regardless of how successful they are. But that grain of sand does matter. You want to accumulate as many pieces of sand as you can to the point where you have so much of it you can form your own landscape. Best way to learn is from other people's failures. Second best way to learn is from yours. and find out what other people's are. Sometimes their failure might not be yours. Sometimes one person's failure is another person's success. My business plan is a failure for most people in the industry. Most people's business plan is, how can I do more, attract more people? It's about volume. That's success for most people. Most people are successful in this business with that. Yours probably will be too. That was not mine. I found my success by narrowing my scope, helping less people, but each of those people more dramatically. It's not a good business plan from a financial standpoint, but it was the right business plan for me from a sense of value standpoint, personal value. So my advice to you would be, get a lot of advice, take all of it with a grain of salt. Trust your instincts. Trust your instincts.
Cool. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for all the advice, Todd.
We definitely need to have you on again.
I'd love to.
Yeah. If you want to share any like information on if people want to like follow you or keep up with you, what would that be?
I don't know.
That's kind of what I figured. That's why I almost didn't answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, I really don't do any marketing. Not because I'm against marketing. I think it's great. It's just not where my interest lies.
Yeah. You can stay. I'm kind of like a unicorn. Mic drop.
I'm like a unicorn.
Yeah, you're kind of like a unicorn. You're kind of like my unicorn a little bit.
Oh.
That's how I've described it before.
Is that good? It's a good thing.
Okay.
Cool.
It
Well,
means
thank
you're
you.
amazing, and we appreciate you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Did
so
that go
much.
the way you wanted to? For completely unprepared?
I think so.
That was
Yeah.
great. I'm excited.
I can't do an hour without that.